But my beats, they are hard.
Edition of the BCSN SportsWrap. Brian Fulford here, and this is a special edition that we might call a Coach's Corner, in which I have an opportunity to talk with a quarterback coach who had a firsthand impact on one of the biggest recruits to sign with an HBCU school during the first recruiting season, or actually I should say the early part of 2020. John Holcomb the third, I believe it's John Holcomb the second, excuse me, recently signed with Florida A&M. He's a quarterback, 6'5", 240, 3-star out of Houston, Texas. Went to Kansas State last year before entering the transfer portal. And it just so happens that the quarterback coach who has worked with him actually has some HBCU ties. And I'm talking about J.P. Tillman. And those of you in the SWAC or at Grambling State University may have heard of J.P. He was one of the quarterbacks on the 2008 Grambling State Black College and SWAC championship team. The coach then was Coach Rod Broadway. And so JP went through, and sort of in this conversation that you hear a little bit about his story, his background, how he and John really came to be a part of his quarterback academy. And that's what JP does now. JP is a quarterback coach in the Houston, Texas area, but he's much deeper than that. And I think in this conversation, which really, this is two parts. So, this is a great conversation. I think if you're just, feel free to take a couple of days to listen to it, or maybe you'll get it all in one sitting, but hopefully, you'll come out of this with a little more knowledge about JP, and I'm hoping it starts and builds a relationship that will carry on past just this initial conversation. So it's a great listen, in my opinion, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope we get an opportunity to do more like these. So at the end, there's two parts. And at the end, I hope you will reach out to me, reach out to JP, and let us know your thoughts on this long-form podcast. So here we go. This is my conversation with JP Tillman, quarterback coach. JP Tillman, or John Paul Tillman, as he is called. He's from Houston, Texas, and actually what we would call a quarterback technician. And I'll just kind of set up before we get to JP a little bit about how I came to find him on Twitter. And that's honestly one of the things I love about Twitter the most, is that it brings you in touch with people that you may have never met or thought to meet. And so sort of the background on how I came to learn of JP was actually through a tweet on January 8th that he tweeted out of one of his clients. And of course, I mentioned he's a quarterback technician, or what some of you might call a quarterback guru, a quarterback coach. trains young men who are interested in our playing the quarterback position at all levels. So anyway, this tweet back in early January was he made reference to, and he shouted out an elite college QB that is still in the transfer portal. KSU transfer is a 6'5", 230 pounds, plays like A-Rod, but looks like Cam Newton. That's a scary combination. And so I'm watching this video. Now, that's what you tweeted, JP. So that was pretty good description. And I'm watching that, and I'm like, wow.
I've been told by people to make sure, you get some good comparisons when you talk about, trying to relay who this quarterback is to, teams, coaches, when you could try to have a comparison of a kid, you got to have some type of player that you can reference to, and people can kind of, they hear those names and they're like, okay, I know that guy.
Yeah.
Put those two people together, okay, I need to check this guy out if I haven't heard of him already. And a lot of people from this, this side of the state, or the state itself, kind of know who John is. He kind of made his own name for himself while he was here in high school.
Well, let me set that up for a second, because I don't think a lot of people may not have known who we were talking about, and so you were referencing John Holcomb the second, I believe, correct? Who at that time had just transferred or had put himself into the transfer portal. He was at Kansas State as a freshman, and those of you who pay attention to the Big 12, you may have known who he was and may have seen him in a game or two. For someone like myself, I had not seen him. So, of course, when I saw that the name, and then you see the video, and you're like, whoa, this kid can spin it. Big kid, moves well. And, of course, he's from the Houston area, which you are from the Houston area. And so, I'll let you go ahead from there. So that way, people have a little background on who he was as you're tweeting that out.
Yeah, I mean, him being from Houston, he played at a high school where, as a freshman, he played, tight end, linebacker. And when he did that, he was pretty good at, what he was doing on the freshman team. But he had a coach that really thought that he could be a quarterback. And so his dad called me, found me somehow, through God and the Spirit. But that was just able to happen. And he's a very intuitive guy that wants to know the position all the way around, from, the footwork, the mechanics, but also the game itself, making decisions. Why does this happen? What do I need to do here when this happens? What am I looking at? He's very, very, very analytical. And so whatever team was going to get him was getting a guy that was hungry and ready to play and continue his football career, because, his last high school game, he accumulated maybe 130-something yards on a game-winning drive that had 4 penalties in it that he overcame to bring his team all the way to maybe the 2-inch line where they had to kick a field goal. And the hold he muffed the hold. So and they lost right there at the Texans Stadium. So, he's been hungry. He's a redshirt freshman right now at FAMU, because that's where he decided to take his talents to. So he's been in college for 2 years. He decided to transfer at the beginning of the season. It was probably 4 games into the season where he was making that decision that he didn't like, just what was going on with the coaching staff, and the coaching staff changed. He was going to fill it out and see what it was like with which is what a lot of kids in his position try to do, because they commit not only to the coaching staff but to the school, and they see themselves wanting to play there. And so when they do that, it's kind of hard to want to leave. And so he really wanted to see it work. It just wasn't gonna be what he wanted it to be. And so, he decided to, hey, I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to jump into the transfer portal. And he had thought about it. It was a long thought out thing. That through the season, even last year, we had as a family, and I'm not necessarily in on the decision, but they definitely want to just see my thoughts. And so in that, I have I have that opportunity to say what I think could be some good outcomes based on decisions that he could or couldn't make. And and I've been in that position. So it's a thing that I had.
Well, I wanted to get and I wanted to make sure we get into that and how that process worked. And so as you mentioned, John Holcomb ends up going to deciding really from the moment I saw that tweet. And I think what also brought my attention to you was, I think on that same day you had tweeted some photos of your time spent at Grambling State in 2008, the year that Grambling won an HBCU national championship, which prior to the one in 2016 was the last time they had won a title. And you were one of the two quarterbacks at that time. So, that's what kind of brought my attention to you. And I was like, okay, wow, here's somebody who, was a quarterback at a high level, trains quarterbacks, works with and has been in the HBCU system. This is someone, I got to keep him on my radar. And then I see 5 days later, now, full disclosure, I'm a FAMU graduate, FAMU fan, but, as we try to cover black college sports and football in general, I try to keep an impartial hat on sometimes. But I got real excited. And I know Rattler Nation got real excited when we saw that, hey, here's a 3-star kid who was just at Kansas State. We just graduated Ryan Stanley, who broke all the records, the passing records at FAMU, led FAMU to an HBCU national title. And so, there's an open spot. There's an open competition. So all of that kind of got me excited, and I was like, okay, I got to find out who J.P. Tillman is, because I think this is definitely somebody that I want to talk to and find out not only about John Holcomb, but just this whole, obviously you see and talk to so many kids regarding the quarterback position. But I think one of the things that has transformed college athletics over the last few years is the transfer portal. So before we get into all of that, JP, let me start with a little bit about you. So that way give people a chance to know you, those who don't know you, or maybe people who had forgotten a little bit about you from your time in Houston, in the Houston area, and at Grambling. Tell me a little bit about J.P. Tillman, the high school quarterback from Houston, and your story, because you were one of the highly regarded quarterbacks in Houston. And, take me a little bit into your recruiting process. You ended up at Missouri, but what other schools were options for you at that time?
I really liked Duke because they had a really high graduation rate, and at the time I was coming from, a really good background where education was at the forefront, and it was the foundation that my parents kind of built for me. And Missouri it wasn't the very first school. Duke was number one, and that kind of held them there. And then Missouri came right after, And so from there, I kind of started competing, kind of trying to make a name for myself because I was in the private school sector when it came time to try to get recruited. It's not that easy as it is now. It was way harder. So a lot of schools were telling me that, hey, we want to offer you, but we want to see you play up. And so I decided, and my dad finally decided to let me play at a public school not too far from our house. And when we did that, we kind of made some decisions on what was going to be best, what was going to be the best suit for what I could do. And I had some friends that were going to a school that were pretty dominant, and I had some other friends going to another school that were pretty dominant. These are both high schools, and so I decided that I'd go to the one where those are my real friends. They were ones I grew up from being maybe 4 or 5 years old playing Little League with, and so it was a really cool decision that I was very happy with because I was able to do some really cool things. And I was able to help a team that wanted to really try to make it to state. And we ended up playing Andy Dalton for the quarterfinals, so the final 8 teams. And when we did that, we were able to go out there, and I ended up getting hurt. When I got hurt, the backup quarterback came in, and we had 3 quick turnovers, and that was kind of where high school ended. But at that point, I was sad and I was mourning because that part was over. But I knew that it wasn't over. In so many kids' cases, not everybody's blessed to be able to see that second level. It's now these kids have so many more avenues to get found, but they also have so many more distractions and avenues to be deterred from the course that most football players are trying to get to.
Right.
And so I kind of through that part, high school, it was fun, and I was able to decide to go to Missouri. Missouri was a great team that I've seen Brad Smith play.
I remember that.
Tons of times. And Brad Smith and Vince Young had some great games where it was like, man, I can do that, and I could be like those guys too. And thinking that way, that's what I really set my mind to and my focus on. And I wanted to, be that next guy from Texas that was, came in ready to help his team win championship. Because at that time, Vince Young had just won it, and so that was the beginning. That was the beginning. All the Elite 11 things and all of that. It was awesome to be able to be a part of that part. Even though I didn't make it to be a finalist, I made it to the final 25, and we went to Las Vegas. At that point, you kind of go to different places. So we went to Dallas, and then the next one was a little smaller, and we were in Las Vegas, and then the finalist was in another part. And so all that stuff was fun, and it all helped me at the point I'm at now, even at the high school part, where it's like I'm trying to keep these kids focused, let them understand that how they can't be distracted. This part is they only have a certain amount of time. 4 years goes by real fast, and recruiting, the time that you want to be start trying to get coaches to holler at you, talk to you, DM you, whatever these kids say these days for communication. That's one of the things that they have to take seriously with their social media, with how they talk, with how they get together, with their friends and the things they do. Those things are very invaluable. Those are things that they don't think about, I don't think. Everything these days is for a click or a clout, or, it's something that they want to get affirmation from. And so that kind of hurts them because they're looking to, instead of feeling a certain way about themselves, and being confident, it has to come from a neighbor or a friend,
Right.
And so, and then the microwave, how the kids they want it right now, and they don't understand that to the process, there's slumps, and then there's peaks. And so the transition between the slumps and the peaks, you kind of just want to be encouraging to them and be able to help them through those times. I didn't really have too many people. I mean, people didn't start doing the things that we do right now until right now. And so, when I was growing up, when I was coming up out of high school, there weren't too many quarterback coaches. There weren't too many quarterback mentors or people to just help you, because the parents can only do so much because it's only so much they know. I'm a parent myself, and it's just you try to do the best you can for your kid, knowing that they'll be in a certain situation that you may not be able to be there for, and you're trying to get them to act, with the identity that they came from, where they came from, and keep that identity. And so,
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, sir. You're fine.
I was just gonna ask you, who were some of the names that you competed against in high school? You mentioned competing against Andy Dalton and his team back in high school. What other names?
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Danny McCray, he played for the Cowboys. He played at a school called Westfield, which is a very dominant school here. Pierre Beasley, he was a quarterback that was one of the top quarterbacks along with Gerard Johnson here in the city. Those guys were all hoopers. We were all hoopers. A lot of us played on the same basketball team. We played against each other. The city just competed, and they competed at a very high level. And I think that made us all, try to make a name and stand out for ourselves.
And in the Elite 11, what you said you made it to the top 25. That's
Matthew Stafford, Christian Ponder,
okay.
Jevin Sneed. I think Jevin passed away. Gerard Johnson was one of those top guys too. The class that I came from was just a very heavy class. That class had Colin Kaepernick in it as well.
So that would have been the mid-2000s, right? Around 05, 06, somewhere in there?
2005, 2006, yes, sir.
Okay.
There was a lot of dominant quarterbacks came out of that class. So, that's the thing too, going back to what you were saying originally in the beginning, where these kids kind of have a limited amount of places they can go to, because like I started telling people not too long ago, there's more and more high schools being built, but there's not more colleges being built and
That's
being
true.
added to the Power 5 and in the G5 conferences. So the kids have to be okay with going to maybe a Division I AA or a Division II school, knowing that that's really their talent could play for a bigger one, but right now this is what they have to work with.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing. It's any opportunity to get a chance to play football and do it at a high level is a blessing. And you can see there's positions in the NFL open to any and everybody.
Right.
And so as these guys keep getting these jobs, these kids can keep putting themselves in the same position that someone else came from, and being that next guy to be able to say, I did it, I came from this, and now there's kids saying I can do it too. And so that's what I think people are going to find themselves making that decision here soon, because, like I said, there's not the same amount of places to go.
In your recruitment process, obviously Missouri, Duke were on your radar, who were after you. Obviously you ended up going to Missouri. Were there any HBCUs? Because obviously you're in the Houston area.
I mean, my list of schools was nice. I think, I was recruited by about 12, 14 different programs at the time. And all of those, maybe 9 of those were Division I schools, and all the schools here, HBCUs, Grambling, Southern, I was able to kind of add those schools to my list as well. So the list started growing. Once I moved schools to be able to get the scholarships, because I wasn't getting that many. Iowa State, Colorado was another 2. In the end, I had Oregon. And what happened, I ended up finding out about an Oregon scholarship the day before signing day, so I didn't even really know about that.
Okay.
I didn't really even know about that until it was too late. I had, those guys, 247 rivals, or at the time there was no 247, there was just rivals. And
right.
They're blowing my phone up asking me about why I haven't taken a visit to Oregon. And I'm like, man, I don't know anything about Oregon. And so that's kind of where that fell. But Missouri had a lot of things that I liked. But at the same time, I liked a lot of things that had nothing to do with football. Really, okay. When I talk about football, I mean the game. And so when I talk to these kids that I'm around, that I get to train and have the opportunity to work with, I'm constantly, letting them hear things from me on that notion, I want you to go to a place that wants you and shows you that you are needed, not to a place that feels like, it's great to have. It's great to have you. And, a lot of them have made those decisions on schools based on those words, and being able to say, hey, I think these people really do have a genuine love and respect for me, and they see me being able to play and help their program. It's not just me being another number. And so, because that's a big part too, is finding a home and playing in a place that the coach wanted you there. It's not just
But isn't that's such a hard thing to express or help kids understand, because the same, obviously coaches have to build their team and they have to build depth. So what he's telling you in this year, he may have already similarly said. It's almost like just because he may have said it similar to another kid a year ago or 2 years ago, and both may be true. He may like that kid just as much as he likes you today. And, is that part of the process in helping kids understand, especially when it comes to competition?
No, you're exactly right. And I think these kids really want to compete. They want to be able to be on that level that they say, hey, I feel like I can play and compete with anybody and win the job. That's the goal, is to be the QB1, the guy out there that's under center and making plays, helping his team be dominant and winning games.
Can they understand how they become QB2 though? I guess is sometimes, that's always the question mark. I think I'm always interested to hear how that process goes when, this year is not your year, or at least at the start of the season, it's not your time, Can they handle being QB2 for now?
Being able to sit and learn is key too, I have several guys, La Tech, SMU, that are sitting at QB2 right now. And out of those guys, all of them can get in there and be QB1. It's just the fact that right now there might be someone older, there might be somebody that's needed to that's a senior. There's somebody that came in and transferred. Maybe they know the plays better. Maybe you have a situation where the coach is maybe the coach left, and you've got to work for this new coach to understand you and what you can do. Sometimes those guys come in with biases. They come in with preconceived ideas of how they want the team to be ran and go through. The channels they want everybody to go through, because every ship is different. Some people you talk straight to the head coach. Other people, you talk to the assistant. And then you get to talk to the head coach. And so I didn't get to answer all the questions you had asked me that first one. What were how did you start the first this past 2 minutes?
Well, I was just kind of transitioning a little bit, because I think we were talking a little bit about the I was really going into a little bit your background. I know we've been kind of jumping in and out, current stuff and even some of your background stuff. And I think we were just talking about the QB1, QB2, how quarterbacks kind of get used to. I mean, obviously everybody wants to compete for QB1, but being able to sort of adapt and deal with being QB2 and just that learning process.
There's a lot to learn. I've got a guy at SMU right now. His name's Terrence Gibson. He can play wherever he goes, wherever he steps foot. But there's things about the game that's always left to learn every day. There's new things, and you never can say, "Oh, I got it." And to be able to have the opportunity to learn from somebody else's failures helps you be able to say, okay, I'm not going to do that. Okay, I understand why this happened. When this happens next time, I'm going to do this when it's my turn to come up, because I've seen him do this. And it might not even be a failure that you learn from, but it could be something that actually is a success. And that success could be something that you don't necessarily do good, or that you don't even do at all. And so when you see it in that light, you can find yourself being able to say, hey, I'm here for a reason, and while I'm here, I'm going to be able to learn and grow and develop, and I'm going to be QB1 once this guy's gone, or I'm going to be QB1 the moment I get the opportunity to get on that field if it's a quarterback competition going on. Those things right there are how you really want to get them to think, because there's so much more to the game. Understanding the plays, understanding front, understanding what to do when they do this, understanding, the parts of football that to young quarterbacks aren't really a topic of conversation. If you polled how many quarterbacks know defensive fronts and alignments, they probably don't. Probably 80% don't. Maybe that's kind of high, maybe 70%. But it's not something that's coached up, and it's not something that coaches, that quarterbacks, they're going to try to figure out how to throw. They want to know, timing, rhythm. It's some things that, you could go to camps today and you'll see some of the, big-time quarterback coaches just talking about under center, getting the snap, getting away from under center. Things that get, taken for granted because the game has turned into more of a passing game and in shotgun a lot. And so the drops are more, have different tempos and they have, different rhythms. And so, that goes into what I do when it comes to coaching,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, yes, sir.
No, well, I was just going to, no, go ahead. I wanted to transition or come to a point where you talked about, we were talking a little bit about the QB1 and being QB2 and in your own career as you were coming up through college, you had to deal with that. You went to Missouri and you found out that you ended up playing a couple of years behind Chase Daniel at Missouri. Now, I don't know if you guys, were you in the same class?
No, he was there a year before, and he went there. He just came off winning state. He was the guy that everybody in our state knew about because he won state a couple of times.
Right.
Or he went to state one year and won another year. So it was just it was a thing that I didn't think with Brad Smith being there. I thought he would redshirt and it would give us the opportunity to compete. But I wasn't really paying attention to how they played him during the season and how they really were trying to get him experience. As they did that, they were really trying to give him the opportunity to, just gain knowledge of the game, how the speed of the game. Those things were made it difficult to take the spot from him in the spring because he had that much more time on the clock.
Right.
And so the coaches knew what he was able to do. And that's kind of, the position John fell in, John being there at K-State, it was a new coach. The coach walked into the school, and he had a quarterback that he had not only knew, but this quarterback had punched the clock already in the Big 12. So they knew what to expect from him, but it was unknown about John what to expect out of what he could do.
Right. So definitely you kind of go with what you know, and that which makes you the most comfortable. Yeah,
right.
Versus the unknown.
Even though the unknown could be a national championship,
sure.
Am I willing to go that route? And especially if I already put in the other guy, and what do I do with the other guy? How will he feel? How will he react? Will he
right.
jump in the transfer portal? And now I'm stuck with, my number 2, QB2 and QB3. So being able to do things the right way and being able to try to get these, that's why these coaches really try to get the kids to stay. They really try to maybe change the position and say, hey, would you like to do this? Sometimes they know the kid is not too happy.
Right.
And if they're not happy and they can see it, physically on their face or how they're talking verbally, sometimes they try to change it. Sometimes I think sometimes the coaches do it in an attempt to be able to get the kid to leave, to not feel like he should be a part of that team.
Sure.
And
sure.
not feel like he's welcome and wanted there anymore. And the kids can feel it, or their emotions allow them to feel a certain way because of how they see it. And so, that's kind of how this say it again?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think that's how this transfer portal thing is starting to play out is, broken promises, coaches leaving and not, and now I don't know the outcome of tomorrow, or I don't know what coach I'm going to get, or I'm not feeling this team anymore because it's not what I thought it was. It's not what I thought it was going to be. They lied to me. So, the coaches got to be real. They got to be realer. And I've got some really real ones. But, you got some that are more transparent than what I think they think they are. And so the kids can see it too.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. The transfer portal has definitely – it is now requiring, especially for the quarterback position, I think it's requiring coaches to be so transparent, probably more transparent than any other position because, one, there's only so many – I mean, again, like I said earlier, you can only have one quarterback on the field at a time, and you're only going to have so many in your quarterback room. So you have to be honest, and you have to – it's almost like for a comparison, you got to be like almost a John Calipari in basketball, where it's like, hey, look, guys, this is, we understand what you're here for, and this is how it is, and it's competition. The guy who gets it is here, and if you want to leave after you don't get it, I understand. But, it's just, you just have to be – it is really requiring guys to be coaches to do something that they really haven't probably been doing in years of past, which is be 100% honest with the kids at the quarterback position. They just have to be. I mean, because you see I think by the numbers, you're seeing the kids in the transfer portal constantly looking for another opportunity. And then you got guys who, when they leave, they go have success. I mean, now that's the big thing now. You've seen success over the last 3 years of guys who have gone into the portal, gone to a new school, and it's changed the recruiting game significantly.
Oh, big time. Just look at who's won the Heisman, Yeah. I mean, just look at who's in the national championship games. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. So for your own, okay, so now coming out of Missouri, you're behind Chase Daniel. Chase Daniel goes on, obviously, we understand he had like a 16, I think he's still in the league, if I'm not mistaken, as a backup for the Chicago Bears last I checked or heard. He's still playing. He's still playing, and you make the decision to transfer to Grambling. And then, you're part of a team under Rod Broadway, who, he's, I think at that time may have been in his second year at Grambling, had previously won a national championship at North Carolina Central, and you're even in a quarterback situation there with the young man, Greg Dillon, at that time. Describe a little bit about how you got to Grambling, and then that season for you and Coach Broadway, and how he dealt with the two quarterbacks, you and Dillon.
All right. I mean, he did. Coach Broadway was why I ended up going to that school. I had the ability at first. I was going to Jackson State. So once I decided to leave Missouri, I think the announcement was on ESPN. People knew. Coaches were calling me immediately. I was able to find some guys that were alums of those schools that went to church with me, and they really were like, "Hey, will you tell Andrew that I'm on the phone? I will call and say he's on the phone." Thank you. They were able to get me to come visit, check the schools out. I liked Jackson State when I got there. The huge stadium, and they had that brand new athletic facility. I think that the Walter Payton? What is Jackson State athletic facility? Is it Walter Payton?
It may be. I don't want to say it wrong and then have Jackson State alums mad at me. So I'm gonna.
Me neither. Even though I beat them up 2 times, so I'm not. But it was an experience, and it was cool. My thing about Black college football was immediately when you think about it, you think about Aaron McNair's and Doug Williams, Shaq Harris's, You think of Jerry Rice. You think of guys who balled out at the places they were at, the opportunities they were given, and so I grew up as a high schooler watching bowl classics, watching, black college football whenever it was coming on TV, going and listening to the bands battle each other. So when I decided to leave Missouri, it was pretty easy where I was going to go because it was somewhere that I felt comfortable with, somewhere where I felt like I not only have an opportunity, but I have a fair opportunity, free from biases, free from any politics that I felt could keep me from being on the field. And so at that point, I was like, well, I'm going to go to Jackson State. So it was pretty much a done deal. I was still at Missouri at the time, finishing up school. And so at the time, I hadn't left yet. I hadn't signed anything. I just told the coaches that verbally I was going to come. And my brother, he had my best friend, we call him my brother, but my best friend, his family had a lot of Grambling nights. And so actually his uncle was one that had took us to games when we were younger. And so he was like, man, you sure you don't want to check out Grambling? And I was like, I like it, but I was like, I like everything that they're talking about at Jackson State. It's cool. I like it. They throw that ball. And they're like, man, we throw that ball too. And so I went on a visit. I talked to some coaches. I checked it out. And then I switched my decision and decided to go on to Grambling. At the time, Brandon Landers had gotten ineligible, and he wasn't going to be able to play. He was the successor to Bruce Eugene,
right?
Who everybody knew about and knows about. And so this just opened a window of opportunity for me to come in, compete, and play football. And the cool thing about Rob Broadway was how he made us both feel like we were needed and that we were a part of his offense. I maybe years ago, 2016, I think, I had posted a picture of us playing Northwestern State, and in the comment section, Dylan, I had wrote I missed playing against big defensive linemen and making them miss and throwing touchdown passes and Batman and Robin, the SWAT with my boy Greg Dillon. And Greg wrote back, man, we were both Batman. And so that just, years later, that just showed how we felt about each other. And if you can find any articles, that's kind of how we talked. That's exactly how we talked about each other and how we felt. We helped our team. And so, and Coach Broadway the way he coached us and the way he, your time on the field he really got the best out of us because we knew if we did something, we would be coming off. So, right. If you weren't going out there, you had a job to do. And when I went out there, I probably did pass majority of the time that I was out there, but which made it hard for me, but I really didn't see it that way. My dad says he used to say it all the time, but I didn't see it that way. I just seen it as an opportunity because Greg made everybody tired because he had all the D linemen chasing him. And so when they put me out there, they were tired, and now I was able to kind of pick the defense apart because we had a really young roster of O linemen, and our inventory full of some big guys, but they were low on experience. So being able to have Coach Broadway put together an offense that was a wildcat offense somewhat like, and it had the jet sweep in it, the jet motion in it, and we passed out of it. And so that allowed our best running back, who was our quarterback, who was a quarterback, be on the field. And then we even had packages where we played together right next to each other, where I was quarterback and he was right next to me at running back. And so, those things helped us be able to win that title and run through the SWAC the way we did. And we had an awesome defense. And it's just like LSU right now. Like, when you're able to play against probably the best defense in your conference, then you're able to play, or the best defense in college football or in your division of college football, then every practice y'all are getting better because y'all are getting the best of the best every time. And, that defense, they live for interceptions. I think they probably led FCS in interceptions that year, or was dang close. But it just showed what kind of coaches we have. I think Coach Oliver, who coaches at North Carolina Central, he's the head coach now. One of the coaches was an assistant quarterback coach who was just at Eastern Kentucky was a quarterback coach there. So we had some really great coaches to go with a really great group of young men who, just wanted to be a part of history, wanted to be a part of that legacy, because we all knew where we were at, and we know who started the whole thing. We know who the coach that made that school great, made everybody talk about that school. So we talked about it probably every week, and they showed us videos about him, So it was something that they make sure it doesn't die. And so and I think that's why I really wanted to be a part of it all. Playing that season, I had expectations of staying there and playing, and then I had stomach ulcers, and that's kind of where things started going downhill for me, as career-wise, was my body started kind of changing and started failing me in some places where it didn't have anything to do with football. It just had everything to do with my makeup and how the plan God had for me. And so the stomach ulcers was something that I had been dealing with before I even went to college. I had a gastroscopy when I was like 17. They went with a camera and found some ulcers that were bleeding, and they operated and stitched some, and it was an ordeal for a teenager. And I kind of was beginning to realize I couldn't do and eat certain things at that point. And as I went through college football, I kind of had some flare-ups. But after the Birmingham game, the national championship in Birmingham, I really started getting some bad feelings in my gut and in my stomach. And so my parents, we were right there in break now. It was Christmas break, so my parents took me to the doctor that I had went to when I was a high schooler. And he said I needed to have another operation, because from what I was saying, they wanted to go back in there and check it out, and it ended up being worse than it was the first time. So I had to stop playing, and I stopped playing for like maybe almost 2 years, a year and a half, a little longer than a year and a half. So I say 2 years. And from that point, I was trying to be able to get my body right and get back into playing football, because I hadn't played football for a while. So I wanted to just get my story back right, get back
Right.
on where I started off. And so at that point, I went back to all my old places, all the places I had worked out, all the coaches I had, and I just started training. And I had the ability to meet a guy who knew some coaches at Hardin Simmons, and so I decided to go and meet those coaches. Well, I had a great meeting with them, and I liked them, and the doctors had cleared me to play again. And so it was between them and Prairie View A&M. And since I had set out for that time, I was all right to go back, to another school in conference. But I had a lot of people that were close to me that were like, man, you should just go in and go to this school. This school's nice. It's a good. It was one of the winningest schools. Well, I went, and the coaches had left right when I got there.
Oh man!
And so the coach that ended up being the head coach, and the quarterback coach, the new quarterback coach, they didn't see me as a quarterback. They see me as Brandon Jacobs / some type of tight end that can, play and dominate. And so that's what they wanted me to play. And I had been running from that notion my whole career because I was very athletic. I was big. I could catch. I could do all types of things, but that wasn't where I was. That wasn't where my passion was. That wasn't where I seen myself when I was training, when I was younger, when my parents were paying or taking me or driving me or flying me wherever we were going to go. If this is what I wanted to do, this is what I wanted to do. And so I was going to do it, and nobody was about to change that story except for me. And if I decided that I wanted to do that, then I would do it, but I didn't. And so the boys are that way. A lot of the boys are that way. And I have some that are they're football players, but I have some that are very, very passionate about their career of being a quarterback. And so when they asked me to play tight end, we were on a losing record. I was like, I'm not playing tight end. They're like, well, we need help on short down and distances. So we're going to put a package together where you're going to get the snap and you might throw it or you're going to run it. And I was like, okay. I was like, I'm tired of losing, so whatever I can do to help. So we started. I played. They put me in that position. They called it Black Rhino, and I played it for the first 3 games. I had 8 rushes for 80 yards. In those 3 games, and I didn't get to throw the ball one time, and I ended up separating my C3 and my C4. Spraining. I ended up having a very high grade sprain in my neck, where they said I had a little mild separation, but I was paralyzed on the ground for like maybe 10, 15 seconds, and I couldn't feel anything. My running back came over to me and grabbed my hand. I couldn't feel his hand, but I could see him grabbing me, so I just, told my muscles to squeeze, even though I couldn't feel them, and I got up, and the coaches were asking me what happened, and I had went into the hole, and I slipped, and a guy hit me with my head down, hit me in the back of my head, and so I ended up just crumbling to the ground, and they took me to the hospital, and at that point on the drive to the hospital, I started to kind of question my decision to help them play and take this role on, because it seemed like I was getting farther away from what I was trying to do, especially as I was riding to the emergency room with my neck the way it is.
Right.
And so as I didn't play anymore, and I didn't even play 4 games there, but I had redshirted already. But I could have had a medical red shirt, and I still could have played 2 more seasons. But I decided at that point that I would just go back home and start going to rehab again and trying to find a way to get my quarterback career moving towards the professional ranks.
Figure out the next step.
It's because at Missouri, at Grambling, I was already getting ready to be in a draft class. I had a draft grade. I had Doug Williams coming to practices every other week, and he was the head scout for the Jaguars. Their Patriots were there, the Jets were there. Everybody was there, and those were the things that made it hurt, because you know how close you are, so you want to keep going because you know what you had seen and the conversations you had with certain people, and it's finally starting to get the way you wanted it to turn out, and all of a sudden, boom, you get sick, or boom, your body's not what you thought it was, and now you can't play a game, not because someone said you can't. Your performance is bad, but because your body's failing you. And so when I going back through it all, I would do it all over again. It's just once you're out of football, it's hard to get back in it. And when you start having a family and you got to start paying bills, you got to start trying to figure out what you're going to do with the time you have left. Because we don't know, you don't know how long it is, but you want to pursue your passion. And when I was leaving Hardin-Simmons, I don't talk about it much because I try not to talk bad about any coaches, or the only part I talk to my boys about it. They know. I talk to anybody who wants to talk about it, but it's just a part that had hurt because I knew. I went to Hardin-Simmons, and Hardin-Simmons was a Division III school, and that was 2 years removed from playing at Grambling and not even throwing an interception. And when I went to that school, Hardin-Simmons, they put me at 5th string on the depth chart, and I never got any reps. And so that's why I moved to play something else, because they would never let me even practice, really. All I did was warm up, throw routes on air, and then I ran sprints. And then they were like, oh, we have something for you to do. We'll let you throw punts and kickoffs because you can throw it higher than we can kick. So that's what I did. So, you start to see, at that point, it was like, man, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe it's this low. I'm at this low point right now. And so, that got me to change my position because of how I felt emotionally. And I was just like, why is it not working? Why is this happening right here when I just came here to get film and play at Fort? Because this school was the most winningest school, and they were trying to win the national championship, and it was like, man, I'll be able to do it here, and I'll get my film, and I'll get what I need to get, and I'll be back. And the comeback would have started, and I did it differently, but people, I coming out of high school, I was this guy, and I'm still that guy. And so that's what John, and that's what any of these boys shoot stretch, the 6'7" guy I told you about earlier, that's what they're pushing themselves to see, the reality they want to see, through the visions they have, every day. And so when I tried out for tons of teams, BC Lions, Edmonton Eskimos.
Hold on, before we go any further, let's do this. Let's take a break for a second. I want to take a break because I want to set up the second half of where you transition to once the college is done, and then how you got into the career that you're into now. So I want to take a pause, I want to take a break, and so that way we can come back out and talk a little bit about what happened after Hardin-Simmons, and then also, you know, how you transitioned into being a quarterback technician, and then also some of the things that you're working with guys like John Holcomb and others. We're talking with J.P. Tillman out of Houston, Texas. He has a quarterback academy called 5-Star General Academy in Houston, Texas, and fascinating conversation. But we're going to take a break for a moment and come back, and we'll finish with the second half of our conversation right after these words.
You know, the real reason why I went after Comcast and Charter, it didn't have anything to do with my cable networks. It didn't. What happened was a gentleman wanted to do the Black College Sports Network in partnership with the HBCUs, and Comcast did not accept it, and that would have made a lot of money for these black colleges. Absolutely. And it would have educated the Black College Sports Network. This is what he wanted to do. That would have educated a lot of black kids. And when they didn't do that, that's when I came off the bench and said, okay, I'm gonna light you up like a Christmas tree. Okay? That was the real reason why I got into it, was when I saw what happened with the Black College Sports Network, which I don't know. I just knew that these black, all right? I knew that these black colleges were gonna benefit, and these black kids were going to get the education that they deserved and not have to pay.
Now, you can live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loop machine. Going around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
Welcome back to this conversation on this BCSN SportsWrap podcast, talking with J.P. Tillman, the quarterback technician, as we like to call him, over at the 5-Star General Academy in Houston, Texas, where he works with young men who have aspirations of being quarterbacks on all levels, high school, college, and even professional, I would imagine. So JP, we left off in that first segment where we talked about your transition to, you know, some of your health issues that you had to deal with and overcome just to have an opportunity to be at Hardin-Simmons. That didn't necessarily work out the way you had envisioned, and you came to that realization that you know, what's next, you know, or at least trying to figure out what's next. Talk a little bit about, after Hardin-Simmons, what was next for you in terms of still trying to chase your dream as a quarterback playing professionally at the next level?
Well, I mean, it was different because once you get to that point where you're chasing something that you feel should be yours and you're trying every day to go after it, I mean, you're really trying to push yourself at that point. I mean, you've always been pushing yourself, but at that moment in time, there's nobody following. There's nothing about followers, and that's what I feel about right now. Like there's nothing about fans. You know, there's nothing about any, because you pretty much at that point, there's nobody, you know, nobody talking about you. There's nothing really going on in the realm of what you do in football, because you know you have to have performance. You have to have things to talk about. You have to have things to see. And that was one of the reasons why I was trying to continue playing, was so that my film showed that I was who I was saying I was, and that I should be able to, continue playing now that I was healthy. I'm the same person I was. And it's hard because you gotta balance life and football at that point, schoolwork too, if you're still trying to go after that degree. Things that you take for granted as far as study hall, the simple things, somebody getting your books and having your books ready for your classes. There was times where I was just a student, or I felt the student part, when you got to go find the books yourself or find someone to help you find the book for a class. And so, being a student when your whole life you were a student athlete is rough. It's hard. It's different. If you can imagine, just a grade was always something that kept you off of the field. So in doing that and making sure that you were eligible, middle school, even elementary, because most people's parents you don't pass, you ain't going to practice. So it's just a new thing to take on, but it also will encourage you and strengthen that fire and that desire to not let this be where it ends. And that's what I mean by, you pushing yourself is you understand that if it's to be, it's up to you. And you have the pen, and if you see it a certain way, then write it out that way and chase after it. And so that's where I think we've seen a lot of people just try to have that comeback career, that comeback story, and be able to say, I was down, but I wasn't out. I made it through that dark period, but here I am, and this is what I have to show for it. And so I think that's what you see in anybody that travels that path. And so I think that's that's kind of the answer I have for your question. But it was, I like I said earlier, I don't change any of it because it's made me who I am now. It's put me on the path where, like I said, if I wasn't here, I know God would have somebody else doing it. So I'm blessed that I'm able to do this and do it every day. And I'm one of the hundreds of people who do this same thing. I think I'm good at what I do, and I'm different in how I do things, but I think to be able to be a quarterback coach, quarterback trainer, I think it's a blessing in itself, because you get to be around kids who dream to do things with their lives that you may have gotten to do or you might not have gotten to do, but you push them to see them get to those places, and so it's not about you, it's about those kids, and that's got to be what it stays about,
When did you get to that point of saying, I want to do this full time? This is what I love. I'm going to make this my full-time occupation.
The transition is between Hardin-Simmons and going to try to be a professional quarterback for the CFL, NFL. I kind of went on a journey to increase and develop myself, because I knew when I was at Hardin-Simmons, I didn't get many reps. I didn't get to do much. And that happened because I was able to do certain things at practice, and people seen me do certain things, and they were like, wow, this is really, he should be playing. I would have people coming up to me saying, why aren't you playing? But, certain circumstances, the coach, the guy that they had, he was from that town. His dad owned barbecue restaurants. Coaches ate there all the time. it was politics. So I wasn't, it wasn't for me to be engulfed in, and that wasn't where they wanted. And so when I moved past that, I had a lot of things that were fueling me to finally break out and be and set out to finish off what I had started. So I went to see a guy named George Whitfield, and George at that time had just trained Johnny Manziel and Cam Newton and Andrew Luck, and I was on that. I wanted to be on that same path, and if that's the guy they had to see to do it, I wanted to see what he had to say about me. I went to a small little camp that he had out in Plano. There I met a guy named Joe. It's Hank Spates, and the other guy's name is fleeing me. But there was 3 guys that all worked. They worked with George Whitfield, and when they came down to Plano, that there was a group of little bitty kids, and I was probably 22, and the rest of these kids were like 9th grade and down. And so, but I had a dream, I had a vision. I was there for a reason, and I kind of showed, the kids were watching me do certain things because Joe and Hank and George, they all were there. So yeah, Matt Joke. So those are the 3 guys, and so they were there working, and they were there training me. But they seen Matt Joke seen that I really had something. And so he called George and told him about me, and they invited me to come down to San Diego for the college camp they had with the college guys. And so at that time, there was guys down there like Joe Montana's son, Nate Montana.
Yeah, I remember that.
There were several guys that came down there, and George just really took me in. He taught me a lot of things about myself, how to play the game, my footwork, throwing the ball, just different things, evading. And that's kind of where the seed kind of started, and that's where it kind of, that's where I say this all kind of spawned from. And I give George a lot of credit, and a lot of things that I do, still today is just because he helped me kind of see that there was another side to football. Even if I wasn't the one on TV throwing the football, like I could still help and I could still be a part of the game without being that guy. And I didn't have to be that guy. I just wanted to see kids learn, grow, and go on and fight for what they feel like they want to be. And so, I went to several mini camps. I went to several tryouts. I made it. I went to several mini camps for CFL teams. The Ticats, Edmonton Eskimos invited me. One of the receivers, one of their Hall of Fame receivers, Fred Stamps, was a guy that I worked with. Sent videos to his team. They came down for a tryout. And just in the end, I never could get that waiver part right for medically. Breaking my neck, the stomach ulcers. I just had a lot stacked against me when it came to the medical examination. But when it came for me to throw, I went to the BC Lions. They had 275 people come to try out, and by the time 2 hours had been spent, there was only 16 people on the field. And I was the only quarterback on the field, and I had threw like 6 touchdowns that day playing 8-on-8. And so, I thought I was going to get signed for sure to that team. And again, it came down to the same thing every time. And so I started getting discouraged. I started getting just a feeling that it was coming to an end because no one was really looking past my injuries and my medical examinations. It was really hard to make those things invisible, even though you didn't see it when I was out on the field at all. It was internal. And so those things just those.
Would
and
you have signed I'm sorry. Would you? Well, let me ask this. Would you have signed if they had offered you a waiver? And I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but if they had offered you a waiver at that point in your life and your career, if they had offered you a waiver and say if something were to happen, you promise not to, sue the.
That's been offered, and I couldn't with the family that I had. Those decisions didn't seem a smart decision to me, and
right.
Even though it's like, man, you're right there. There's so much more than football, and I knew that if this door was closing, then God certainly was opening another one. I just had to be ready to allow Him to close one and wait for Him to open the other, and have that patience. And so when all of this was transpiring, we had my daughter. I think my daughter was maybe 1. I said, man, I'm just gonna finish out. I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna finish. At that time, I was working on videography. I was working on being a videographer and a director. My majors in cinema arts, and so I just said I was going to do this. Is what I was going to do, because this is a part that I wanted to do. I've always wanted to do, and it was something that I had the opportunity to also do as a job, where I was the head editor for 2 different cable TV shows, and so and working on being able to put together intros and 28-minute, 30-second, video every week, and send that in the closed captioning and go through all of that process. That was a yearly job for me at that point, as I was going back to school. And I think we were getting ready to have my son, and my job and the job I had, and I had been doing it for maybe 3 years. Going on 4, and the job I had got canceled. And so at that point, I was like, dang, I need to work. I need a job.
Right.
And so I had started training I started training my nephew, and doing something on the side, getting out there and hanging out with him, doing some things. And a buddy of mine, and the coach that left Hardin Simmons, that wanted me to play for him, called me, and he said, "Man, I want you to do something." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Would you want to help me coach this camp?" And I was like, where is it at? How many days is it? And he was like, "Oh, it's at your old high school." I was like, "For sure." And so I went out there, and he had like 200-something kids out there.
Wow.
And they came from all over Texas to come train with him. His camp's called Aired Out Passing Academy.
Okay. And
Coach Wardis is his name, Alan Wardis. And Coach Wardis, along with George Whitfield, years before me meeting Coach Wardis again, kind of were the 2 people that impacted me and kind of put me on this vibe that I could make a difference. But even though I couldn't keep playing football, the knowledge and the information that was inside of me, I could still do something with. And it wasn't about creating a business at that. It was about being able to impact lives and change directions kids' careers go based on position and knowledge, and trying to see them get to a different point and take their family to a different point. Change the idea that black quarterbacks can't play quarterback past high school because most of them are athletes, and they might not know how to read defenses, or they don't have the mechanics to keep them, keep them effective and be in high competition at elite level with, whoever else is throwing the football. The majority of quarterbacks that are a certain race, at
It's
that
interesting
time,
that you. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, as playing quarterback, we've seen that, African American quarterbacks have always had a deficit when it comes to how many can make it to that elite level. And even the college ranks, where you see so many kids that have the potential, but they never can get close to the ceiling that most expected of them or many thought they could get to. And a lot of it's just the information was never allowed to get to them. Some of them didn't know where to get it. Some of them didn't know how much value it had. Some of them parents couldn't afford it. And so that was where things started to build in my brain on creating something here in the city of Houston and allowing these kids to gain this wealth of knowledge, not just from me, but from other people that I know and network with and I've played with, and that are also doing this same thing. And as I started this 7 years ago, it was my nephew who's he's in the 6th grade going to the 7th grade. So yeah, I mean, I've been training him since he was like a kindergarten first grader. He was the first one. And my brother would just bring him out there, and we would just have some fun, watching him because he could throw. And so from there, I went to that camp, and then it was three guys that I got from that camp. One was at a brand new school in inner Houston. One was from Brenham, and the other one was a little kid that he ended up growing up, and now he's an 8th grader. And when I had him, he was in the going into the 2nd grade, and he's he'll be a well talked about kid in these next oncoming years. And so I had a young kid, and I had 2 older kids, and I had my kinfolk. And from those 4 and the next 5 years, it just blew up. The next quarterback that I had was John Holcomb, and John, T.J. Goodwin. Those 2 guys I got almost right next to each other. T.J. was a year younger than John, and John was getting ready to turn from a defensive end to a quarterback. And so when we finished, TJ watched John go to K-State, and then the following year, TJ went to UTEP. And so the boys, what was cool to be able to create was the competition within all of these boys, and they wanted to one-up each other, but they also are each other's biggest fans. The competition level inside our workouts, our training sessions, they help these guys get to different levels, whole new levels, through our workouts and training sessions. And so that's really how it started. And I mean, now there's probably 137 kids in the academy now.
Wow.
It's grown to be this crazy thing. In the past 3 years, a kid from this academy has been able to help his team win the biggest state titles there are in the state 3 years in a row. The academy has over 5 champions. One kid has won an ESPY. We got 1 All-American this year that played in the Adidas All-American game. He's the first one that we had in that game. We had 3 other All-Americans in the blue-gray All-American game. And the city of Houston has has kind of showed its dominance right now over the state, winning all of these state titles. And the kids here, I think I had 29 guys that started on a varsity team this year. And out of those 29, actually, I think I redid it and it's 31. But out of those 29, there was 27 that went to the playoffs. So the work that these boys put in with their coaches at high school, but also with me during the week, during the off season, during the summer, is really starting to show, and the city's really seeing the fruits of all these young quarterbacks' labor. And it's not just me. There's tons of other quarterback coaches in this city that are doing a great job. I just happened to come in at the beginning of something that there wasn't really any quarterback coaches. Going back to the beginning, I told you about a guy named Gerard Johnson. That was a really good friend of mine. We played basketball together. We were the two top quarterbacks in the city coming out in 2005. He had a quarterback academy. He still has one here. We're great friends. He now is a coach for the Colts, and so now he sends all his kids, straight to me because we coach the same type of way. We coach the same type of stuff. We just coach a different way. And he knows how I coach, and he understands that those boys will get better with being with me. And I'm appreciative of him. And it's grown to where there's a quarterback coach on every corner here now. And so, but it's cool. It's cool because, like I've been doing this for a long time, and word of mouth is how my business runs really outside of social media. That's how you found me. And I'm a big social media user for these kids to be able to get exposed and be out there and find a way to get the attention of a college coach. And, I use a lot of what I learned in school. I use a lot of the cinema arts to be able to captivate audiences and teach the kids how to make their own highlight videos, captivate a coach's attention, make a top 10 and put that as the first 10 plays of your video. And then after that, still have to have the whole 2 minutes leading into the rest of the video needs to be nothing but, showing your identity, showing them who you are. And so, I found a really good thing to be able to do, to still be able to use a lot of things I've learned throughout my life to help these young men, be better quarterbacks, and just, be better when it's time for them to live their life outside of football, and so, because the ball will go flat. They hear me say that all the time. And so, those things right there, you can't wait to figure it out. You've got to have some plans in place and some ideas of where you want to see your life once football is over. And it's hard to imagine what's life like without football when you push yourself to be a gladiator. What do you do now that they stop calling your name? But you've survived all of these years. And so you've got to figure it out. And some people, they have a rough time figuring it out because, that void is hard to fill. And, I just accredit it to being, as right as having righteous parents and having them, put me on the right path, and I not steer too far from it. And my relationship with God has allowed me to make it through the dark times and the valleys, to be able to see, and climb and continue climbing the mountain and moving. And so, I try to take my Christian walk. I try to take the life that I live and that I live every day, and I try to let the kids see that through me when they train, just what they hear from me saying. Sometimes they don't hear me say things about football. Sometimes I'm talking about God. I'm talking about how I relate things to life, how I relate things back to Christianity, and just being able to let them see that it's more than football, and you have to have a relationship with God. You have to have an eye that sees through things, and you have to ask for wisdom. And you can't be naive. And the whole thing about girls, grades, social media, all those things are things that sometimes they're gonna go untalked about. Sometimes they go untalked about in depth. And so I just, for those kids that may not have that father figure, or they just need an extra voice, because maybe they're not listening to the father figure they have. It's sometimes the role I play too. I can't tell you how many times I go to sleep at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because I'm talking to somebody's dad. And so it's just, I know these kids' parents truly care about them because of the conversations we have, and the in-depth, the in-depth look they give me sometimes on, and a lot of times the help isn't quarterback lessons. It's just listening and talking, and so that's been kind of how I navigated, and I've got to this point now. The kids, a lot of it's just about believing in themselves, seeing what they see in the visions, and making that become reality just through work and through having faith.
I have so many more questions what I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure people got a chance to know you. And I feel like I mean, obviously in just a few conversations we had, I hope people hear your story and have heard about you. And I have so many other questions because I'm fascinated, and I think a lot of people are this day and age, because the quarterback position has become it has become a main focus at the highest of levels, and it's filtered its way down. So I have so many questions about that, but I don't want to take that time, and I don't want to take this time for that. And I don't want to take, you've been gracious with your time on this. And so I'm hoping we can have a further discussions and other conversations that we can share with people about just little things that I've kind of taken notes on from our conversation today. Before we close, talk a little bit about how John Holcomb found FAMU, how FAMU and Coach Willie Simmons found John, because as it relates to the transfer portal, I think this is one of the biggest signings for a black college team in this era of transfer portals, if I'm not mistaken. And we've also seen this year other, major college players sign with a couple of schools, HBCUs as well. So just since you have a relationship with John, and I found out you even have a relationship there with Coach Black over at FAMU, how did they find each other?
I think, Coach Black, FAMU has, they've benefited from hiring Coach Simmons. They've benefited from hiring Coach Black over there because they've got some guys that have really had relationships with kids here in this state, period. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a whole lot more kids coming out of this area going to that area, just for the simple fact of Coach Black done a great job recruiting this city. John Holcomb's brother when he left University of Illinois, he came to Prairie View A&M with Coach Black. Coach Black had brought him over there. He transferred, and he came right in and made a difference. So the Holcombs' relationship with Coach Black, that had really turned the table for FAMU to really kind of close that deal with him, even though there was a lot of Power 5 action. It's just that we didn't want John to be out of school for a long time, and we didn't want him to miss a semester, even though he was going into a semester that he really had, I believe, 12 extra credits going into the year. I think he's at 48 right now, but he's only been in school for a year and a half, so 3 semesters. And so that came to be a pretty big factor, too, because he needed to get somewhere. We wanted him to get into spring ball, knock it out, and try to compete for a job in the summer, but compete for a job in the spring, win a team over, and go somewhere to create, a championship mentality inside the program. And so FAMU has done a great job this past year, great job the past couple of years from what we've been able to see. We really like what FAMU was bringing back. I mean, it just really worked out really well for just HBCU, for this time period, because, John was talking to a lot of schools that were, really wanting him to come in, whether it was North Carolina State or he was looking at Texas Tech, Baylor, these schools he was in constant communication with. U of H was a really, that they were sitting at number 2. But as far as being able to get over there and understand if they had a scholarship left or, those things start coming down to the numbers of how many scholarships are left and when guys are leaving, when they're graduating. And it just didn't work. The timeline didn't work out well for any of the other schools. And so when we looked at it and the time was coming down to pick a school, and we were probably maybe like a month out, we had been talking to Coach Black. We had been kind of, pitching the idea to John about, look, man, I'm not really, he's 6'5", he's 242. Well, now he's 229 pounds.
Right. He made a point of expressing that he had trimmed down some from the reports. I saw a tweet where he made sure to let a reporter know. He was like, I'm not that big.
Right. And that he knows I'm always on him about his weight and everything, too. So he's, part of my career, I've always been a thick one. And so I've, had to endure all types of workouts, extra workouts and all that to keep the body right. And so when it came down for John, we were sitting there talking to Tennessee State, Tavares Jackson, and I really liked that match because here's somebody who had did what we're trying to do right now. Here's right. Somebody who not only did it, he was successful in how he did it. He won a
right.
Super Bowl. He was in the league over 10 years. That type of thing doesn't happen too much for the black quarterback, period. But for a black quarterback that came from the HBCU, this was awesome. This was the next guy to do it since Air McNair. So it was like, man, this is, if this is how it works out, John, this is a blessing. This is awesome. And so, it had those conversations, but John had, Coach Black and John, they have a relationship, like I said. And when you look at the team that FAMU had, they were just losing a quarterback. And them just losing a quarterback and having a quarterback competition and being able to play in these awesome classics, these awesome bowls, and have an opportunity to take a school to, a bowl game, playing for, who's the best of the best in HBCU, and play with the, I think all of those things played a factor in FAMU landing John and John deciding to take his talents out there to Florida and be out there in Tallahassee and, see what that whole
how much did you have to share with him about the black college experience? How much of that did you have to share with him? Because I'm sure maybe I don't know about his family or whatever, but
yeah, I had a lot to share with him. Both about the schoolwork, the bus ride, when to try to get your work done for the game schedule. The travel schedule is kind of crazy because you got to take buses to places. If you can't take the plane. So, you might leave for a game on a Wednesday and there might not be study hall tutors on your bus, so you're going to have to kind of really be, just on top of things and making sure that you're not falling asleep on that side, as far as getting in there and showing the guys that you're a leader and you came in not to take anything but to earn everything. And, being able to get these guys to see you buy in. There's videos out there right now of him throwing passes out there at FAMU on the field. He's already working. He's in his FAMU gear. He's got a center out there. So, John understands what he's there for. He understands where he's trying to go. He understands what has been taken from him. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, he understands where the path that he's on leads to and how he's still in charge of this whole thing. And, I mean, John's a very confident guy. He's not cocky at all, but he knows himself very well. He's always crafting. I seen him throw a left-handed pass yesterday. So I see he's on to some more craft work, and it was an awesome left-handed pass. He even did a left-handed drop. So this kid here is ultimately a first round draft pick, regardless of where he's at. If somebody was to question the conference play, post his career at HBCU, down the road, I think it's still hard pressed based on the body of work, but also his size, his skill, those things. It's like how if you feel like he needs to go up, if he's won 2 championships, if he's won a championship, he's gone for 5,000 yards combined, or his number. He's got some really crazy numbers in his head that he's pushing for. But he's making it a point to be able to go to the league out of the HBCU because he wants to create that storyline. He wants to create that trend. He wants to see more kids decide to go and take their talents to the HBCU straight out of college and not deal with the politics. And he sees he sees the things that I was telling them when they were young, and when it's all about production and how you do on that field, sometimes, you lose focus and you lose concentration on why you're really there, especially on those big schools. I tell it to the kids all the time. I say, man, look, you have a train ticket. You got a plane ticket. And the thing is, you're going one place to stay there for a little while. The problem is some people end up staying there too long. because they forget that they wasn't supposed to be there forever. They was only supposed to be there for a little time, for a small time.
Right.
After that small time, they had another place to go to. But these people forget that they got that ticket. They got that extra ticket. And they end up falling asleep. They end up finding the place that they had is super fascinating. And that's what I see about the big colleges is how, how much things there is to get lost into, how many things there is to be distracted by.
Right.
And they're everywhere. But
They are. Yep.
the distractions are more intense at some of these schools, and the boys have a hard time of regulating themselves and kind of prioritizing their time. It might not be the girls; it just might be the late night outings and the fun, and it might just be, okay, now mom and dad not here, so I can drink or I can smoke, and you got to kind of be able to let them know that, look, you're gonna make some decisions, you're gonna make some bad decisions, you're gonna make some great decisions. You got to learn from those decisions, but at the same time, you need to be making sure that the things you're doing always show a reflection of you, God, and your family. Like, you don't want to put anything out there that's going to put you in a position that makes it hard for you to see your dreams come true. People can make some mistakes and they get looked over. Not everybody can. And so don't put yourself in that position where you're not in control. And so, I'm always telling these kids, look, man, like I'm not trying to tell you what to do with your life that you've been given, but God tells us that everything in moderation. Like, don't lose yourself. Don't lose yourself in anything, any substance, anything that to fill a void. Like, the only thing that can fill a void is Him, and so just understand that you're there for a purpose, and you got to see it through. Only way you're going to be able to see it through is you got to find you a church home where you at, wherever you go to school. I'm not saying you got to go to church every time, but you need somewhere you can go. There's people there that can encourage you, uplift you, pray for you, and just try to keep your spirit right. Like I said, this is the things that happen on a football field and on a team are unimaginable. And so you can, the feelings that you can feel and emotions you can feel can cause you to do all types of things. And we see it, every year. And so being able to have that connection with the church home, but also with Christ, allows you to see the big picture, to see past right now and see what God has for you, if you press on. And so, recruiting, man. Recruiting is a big thing because these kids want to be recruited. And I say it all the time, patience builds character. Patience builds character. Just continue doing what you do. Those coaches will come. They'll see you. They'll find you. It may not be the school you want. It may not be in the time you want. But it all happens at the time that it's supposed to. And if you're doing what you're supposed to do, it's going to happen. If you're not, that's when you're going to start feeling bad. That's when you're going to start saying, I should have did this, I should have did that. So, that's how I'm out there. My dad's a minister. And he'd be like, man, you be out there doing what I do. You just do it differently.
Yeah, exactly. I see where you get it from. Exactly.
Yeah.
I see where you get it from. I see where you get it from.
And I believe it. And it's the path God had for me, and it wasn't for me to make it to where I thought I was supposed to, because there was people for me to touch along the way, and to have some type of positive influence over. And so that's, I think in this profession is very critical. It's a very critical profession. It's a very sharp, nasty profession where there's a lot of people who either want to bad talk you, or they want to steal your kids, or they want to discredit the things that you have done or who you are or whatever. And that's just a part of the quarterback. It's an alpha position. I think almost anybody that's played this position has some type of confidence that exudes out of them. And these coaches that have played quarterback, you can see it sometimes. And those things sometimes get in the way of us being able to train these kids and keeping it about the kids. And it becomes about me. And I joke around all the time. I put it on Twitter, and I just be like, I'm not P. Diddy. I don't try to be all in the videos and the pictures. Like, you very rarely see me. People have to grab me and pull me out and put me in something for me to be out there. Because I mean, I have fun being a part of the process. People don't have to see me be in the process. It's fun to sit back and watch these kids grow and learn and do things that they couldn't do that they now can do, whether it was 60 minutes, a week, a year, 5 years later. It's such a blessing to be able to see it from the vantage point that I'm at and be able to still help through other processes along the way. And so that it's a lot of things have matriculated to get me to feel and be the certain way I am now. I mean, I still have to catch myself and sometimes watch some football games. I watch the football games now on YouTube because my wife doesn't like watching it with me because nobody likes watching it with me because I rewind stuff and I pause it and I'm looking at stuff.
Breaking it down during the game?
Right. But I mean, it's better than before because before I couldn't watch any of it because I knew where I was supposed to be. And I just knew the level that I played on and how I knew that I would be able to one day I was supposed to one day be the same, that guy. And so, the depression, I think that's a part that it gets a lot of talk about when something happens bad, but it doesn't get a lot of talk about, to me, as far as what can we do to help these players feel a certain way once football is over. And so, because, I've had friends I had one friend, he bought a cruise line ticket because football was over for him because he was on the practice squad for 2 years, and he was better than the defensive backs that were on the team, but they signed these guys out the draft. So those are money players. So he had to find a team that was going to put him on the 52-man roster, 53-man roster, and so for him it was over. So he bought the ticket, so he was going to jump off, and I'm so thankful that he did it. And he's turned his life around, and he's got an awesome wife, and he's doing awesome for himself right now. But the mental health side of football players and life after football is something that I've recently tried to create some resources and some type of platform where kids can start to learn about how the game takes a toll on your life once the football is flat. And a lot of it just has to do with plan and preparation and having goals past other goals. Because once you finish with the game, there's so much life left to live. And then being able to have the mind and have the decisiveness to say no, or I'm not going to spend my money on this too, so that you still have money left over to do some things with, to help yourself create and live off dividends and live off other things that can make you money without you doing too much. So those things are things that me and some of my friends are trying to put together and enact soon.
Right.
In some type of clinic seminar setting. But that's a part of the game. You grow old, the game grows faster, faster and faster every year, and it changes, and so being able to understand when it's your time, being able to understand that there's something left for you, God. When God says it's time for a tree to be moved, you could sit there and you could wither, or you could allow Him and say, "Move me," and go give fruit to a new area of land and a new seed to a place that never seen, the fruit that you have. So that is what
a strong word. Yeah,
that's what had got me. I had a class, but also had a dad that echoed kind of those same words, and you got to be able to move when God says move, because there's many stories of when people sit and they don't move when God says move, and He has to teach them a lesson just as much as He does once you get to the place He asked you to get to help the people that were there, to teach those people about Him. So it's those things.
I got you.
Yeah, those things are what allowed me to be able to push on, and my life couldn't stop. Life just can't stop because it's not the way you set it out to be, because it's not your call. It's just for you to live and make decisions that show that you have a Heavenly Father, and people can see Him through the act in your daily life, your walk. And so that's me. That's how I talk and how I am. People say I'm super patient. I get that from everyone, all parents that train with me, kids that I coach, other coaches that I'm around. I don't scream a lot. I try not to, cuss at these kids. They don't hear me saying too much of that. It's when they hear my tone change, when they hear me get sarcastic, they know, they really know, because it's more of what are we doing with our time and how are we using it to get better, because we're either getting better or we're getting worse right now. So it's all
JP, where can we find you? Where can we find you? I'm going to give you an opportunity to plug your service, your anything that you have to plug, so that way people can find you, whether they're in the Houston area or not.
Okay, my Twitter is the QB Tech. That's TheQBTECH. Then my company is called 5-Star General Academy, so we kind of abbreviate that. It's either FSG. It's 5-Star GQB. And so
5-Star GQB.
5-Star GQB. You can either put number 5, and if you put number 5, that's on Instagram. So 5-Star GQB is the Instagram, and then if you spell out 5, FIVE, Star GQB, then that is for Twitter. And so we have those two accounts through Twitter, and I have my account on Twitter, also IG. But you can find us. You can message us. I have kids that message me with videos saying, "So what am I doing here? Am I doing this right? Am I doing that right?" I have kids I don't even train send me videos and asking questions, and I do that too.
Yeah.
It's cool for kids to want to ask my opinion about something because they feel like I have a good grasp on what I'm teaching, and I can help them. And so I train every day. We even on the weekends, and now we're getting ready to start on mechanic work during the off season, where we do a lot of power stuff. Kids learn to get better with their body movement. I teach from the ground up. I teach totally different than what most people do. because I've just found different ways for kids, all types of ages, to learn how to do these movements and motions with an understanding. And so that's the gist of what we do over there. And it's exciting every time I get a new kid to see their face, to see their parents' face when they understand something new about something they've been doing for, however long they've been doing it. So
right. All right. So that is wow. I mean, look, I almost feel like we have to have, even though this has been a great long conversation for anyone who's been listening to this podcast. I know you probably had to pause it a couple times, come back to it, but I mean, this has been a great conversation, and I am more than thankful that I had an opportunity to do this. And I feel like we have to get together and find a time to do a part 2 to this, because I have so many other questions that I want to talk with you about. And so we'll have to set that up for sometime down the road after we get this one posted. And then I've got some other ideas and things and thoughts that I want to talk to you about, especially as spring football and then the summer and the fall comes. And so I'm hoping that, whenever we have a quarterback-related question, we can go to J.P. Tillman, the QB Tech, and we can.
I'd be honored for y'all to reach out to me and ask me anything, man. So
wonderful.
Appreciate it long time, and it's been a blessing.
Yeah, no, thank you again. That's at the QB Tech, at THEQB Tech on Twitter, also at 5-star GQB. That's FIVESTAR. GQB on Twitter, and then on Instagram it's the number 5-star GQB on Instagram. He's based out of Houston, Texas, but of course you can find him on social media. Reach out to him, send him videos, send him questions, and we look forward to having future conversations down the road. JP, I can't thank you enough for finding time today to talk with me and to share just your story. I'd say a portion of your story, because I feel like we have so much more that we can talk about, but I hope this gives people a great look. I hope this gives people I try
not to be too long and to give you a quick clip note version of, how this all came to be.
No, it's been good. It's been good. And I think it's been really helpful, and this is what I wanted to do. So, again, I appreciate your time, JP. You have a blessed day in the evening, and we will definitely be in touch here down the road, okay?
Yes, sir. God bless, and I look forward to it.
Now, you can live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant-quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
But you stay hard.